In this video, I'm going to give you just some general advice about free response questions on the AP exam. All right, these make up half of your score for the AP exam. So if you can effectively answer the free response questions, then your score is going to shoot up. If you don't know how to answer free response questions, then there's like no hope that you're going to get a good grade because it's only half of your grade. All right, so to get a 5, I mean, you can get most of all the points that you need on the free responses because it's half your grade and you only need about 60 to 70%. So if you get half of it right just on the free responses, the multiple choice isn't as intimidating. And the good thing with the free responses is they're kind of asking the same things every single year, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, so these are just general tips. It's not going to apply to every free response, but it's helpful. The first tip is that free responses often have 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. Sometimes they only have 3, sometimes they have 5. But often you don't need the answer to be right for A and B to get part C. So if you look at the problem and you think for like 3 minutes and you're like, I have no idea how to do A, don't just leave the whole free response blank. Go on to B and treat it like a new problem. All right, sometimes you do need, say, part B for part C, but if you got part B wrong, you use your wrong answer for C, then you can still get credit for C as well. So maybe you're not going to get all the credit for a part because you got it wrong, but if you apply it correctly in the next part, you get all the credit for that one. So just don't be too scared if you think you did something wrong in a part and you're going to get the next part wrong, or if you didn't know part A, it's still a chance you know B, C, or D. And don't give up on an entire 9-point question. Even if you're writing something down for each part, you could get 1 or 2 points. It's much better than getting 0 out of the 9 points. One of your free responses makes about 8% of your exam grade, so you don't want to skip an entire free response and just automatically know you got 0 points on it. All right, tip 2 is to use words, and that's one of the reasons we're kind of doing a whole unit just on free response to get used to this concept, because I don't do a great job of it when we're doing like practice problems, but you're so used to just in math, you get x equals 2 as your final answer, and you're done. But a lot of these are contextual questions, or they're kind of asking you to explain things, so we want to get in the habit of writing like a small sentence, and it doesn't have to be super elaborate, it doesn't have to be a paragraph, it's just like the derivative at 2 is blank. It's just something like that, something simple at the end to kind of summarize all the work you did, or explain what you were doing. But don't be scared to use words, even though it's a math exam. Make sure to answer the question. One of the biggest things is they'll put the word like justify your reasoning or something like that at the end of a question. That's normally worth 1, maybe 2 points of the 9. So making sure if it says justify, you're not kind of just writing a bunch of math notation, use some words to help you get there. Also, a lot of times if it's a contextual question, they'll ask you to include the units. Oftentimes getting the units right is worth 1 of the 9 points. So it's like almost a free point because getting units right is not the hardest thing. We know how units work from the original function to the derivative. All right, so you should be able to get the units right and get that kind of almost free 1 point. All right, tip 4 is a hard one for most of us, but you actually don't have to simplify on the free response questions. All right, so it seems insane because on the multiple choice, you have to do the exact opposite. You have to simplify into exactly the answer choice that's right. But if you're on the free response, if your expression could be plugged into a basic calculator, so not one that could do like integrals and stuff. You can't leave the integral as your final answer. That's like a calc thing. But if it's like a basic function, trig, exponentials, multiplication, all that stuff, if it could be plugged into a calculator and get the same answer, then it's a valid thing. Like the readers during the AP grading thing will actually like plug what you wrote in, make sure the decimal equals the actual final answer. All right, so if you took all the time to simplify it and it got that 2, or you could leave it as this big expression, which also simplifies the 2, all right, this is worth the exact same amount. All these are basic functions, so the sine of an angle, some multiplication and fractions, natural logs and exponentials. This is all kind of basic calculator stuff, so this is worth the same amount as that. All right, don't oversimplify, because if you do simplify incorrectly, you don't get the points. So as soon as you have a basic thing with numbers, you're done. One common place this happens is with Riemann sums. Riemann sums, we have like the base times the height, plus the base times the height, plus the base times the height, all these times. If you wrote this out, that's your final answer. You don't have to actually do all these multiplications. You don't have to add it all together at the end. All right, tip 5 is don't use abbreviation. So we have the mean value theorem and the immediate value theorem. Guaranteed, these are each going to come up at least once during the free response questions. You have to explain your reasoning. I'm using the mean value theorem, blah, blah, blah. It's really tempting to use MVT and IVT, But if you mix these letters up or you accidentally use an M instead of an I, you're not going to get credit. So just take the time, or it's a test you're basically working all year on, just take the time to write out mean value theorem or intermediate value theorem. All right, and then kind of famous saying, be quick, but don't hurry. For each free response, in the calculator section, you have 30 minutes for 2. In the non-calculator section, you have 60 minutes for 4. So that gives you exactly 15 minutes for each free response question. Some of them you may be able to answer quicker. Some of them that use the calculator a lot might take you a little bit longer. But your goal is to use about 15 minutes. And there's normally about 4 sections. So that gives you about 4 minutes per section, which seems like a really long time. I bet you have to read the question, kind of understand what you're supposed to be doing, actually apply it, make sure you answer the question. There's a lot to do, but also a decent amount of time to do it. So just make sure you're trying to move quickly, but you're not rushing, because getting it done in 5 minutes instead of 15 is not going to benefit you at all. You might as well make sure you're getting it right as you go. And also, especially in that non-calculator section, when there's 4 questions, don't spend 45 minutes on the first question, because then it doesn't leave you any other time for the other one. So make sure you're kind of trying to pace yourself, and we'll get better at this as we're practicing. All right, so the biggest kind of lesson is FRQs are doable. When we start practicing these in class, they're going to seem crazy. You're going to be like, I don't remember all this stuff. But as we do more, we'll see they're kind of asking the same stuff all the time. So there's a couple things that you really need to have in the front of your mind when you're answering these FRQs. The way you explain your reasoning is the same for all of them. So it's just about figuring out what they exactly want and be able to kind of replicate that. All right, but it's not impossible to do these FRQs. When we do the first one, half the class will get a 1 or 2 out of 9. But we're going to get better and better as we practice.